But in practice growth, what I see is that moment rarely arrives because there is no version of marketing, visibility, or business development where outcomes are guaranteed in advance. And this is just a very honest opinion on what I'm seeing in the marketplace. I'm Sylvia Garibaldi, founder and CEO of a well-established marketing training and done-for-you services company, tailored specifically for the modern legal and financial professional worldwide. While it's taken some trial and error to figure out which methods get the best results for professionals who are looking to grow their practices, fast forward to today, my team and I have nailed down and perfected a process that has helped so many of our clients consistently achieve outstanding results and create a legacy for their practices. I created the Serve First, Sell Later marketing podcast to give you simple, actionable, non-salesy, and results-driven marketing to grow your legal or financial practice like so many of our clients have. If you're a lawyer, mediator, financial, or divorce professional who is looking to become highly visible and wants to create a practice that makes an impact, then you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 106 of the Serve First, Sell Later marketing podcast. I'm your host, Sylvia Garibaldi. So, if you work in law, mediation, or divorce-related services, you know that being careful with decisions is part of who you are, right? You're trained to think things through, to weigh that risk, and to consider consequences before taking action. And I think that way of thinking protects your clients, your reputation, and the outcomes that you're responsible for every day. But that same careful approach can create a problem when it comes to growing your own practice. So what do I mean by this? When you hesitate before making a business or marketing decision, it usually feels responsible because you're not avoiding action, you're trying to make a smart choice. And so you want to feel confident that something will work before you invest your time, energy, or money. So the issue is that growth in professional services rarely offers that kind of certainty upfront. So possibility doesn't come with proof. And so when you are deciding whether to host a webinar, increase your visibility, commit to a marketing strategy, there is rarely a clear signal that tells you that it's going to succeed, okay? Because there are no guarantees at the start. And so the evidence only appears after you have shown up consistently and given it time. So this is where many capable professionals get stuck, and we see this all the time. You may hear yourself thinking, I just need to be sure that this is the right move, or I need more clarity before I can commit, or I don't want to make the wrong decision. And so those thoughts make total sense, and they come from the same care and judgment that make you good at what you do for your clients. And so what often goes unnoticed is that clarity in practice growth, it usually comes after you take action and not before. So when you're growing a professional practice, certainty is not something that you wait for. It's something that you build, and you build it through action, through repetition, and small adjustments over time. And so I think the very instincts that help you as a professional to manage those legal, financial, and emotional risks for your clients can quietly hold you back. And so in this episode, we're going to talk about why waiting for certainty keeps so many lawyers, mediators, and divorce professionals stuck right where they are, even when their work is strong and their intentions are right. And so more importantly, I want to explore how you can approach growth in a way that feels thoughtful and aligned, but without waiting for guarantees that rarely show up. So let's get right into this, because professional training plays a much bigger role than you may realize. So as a professional, you are trained to slow decisions down. You are trained to assess risk carefully, to anticipate those consequences, and to look for what could go wrong before moving forward. And so that training is essential in the work that you do with your clients. And it also protects people when emotions are high and stakes are real and outcomes really matter. And so it's one of the reasons that your clients trust you. But that same training also shapes how you approach decisions about your own practice and the growth of your business. Because you're conditioned to believe that good decisions come after thorough analysis. So you may look for data and reassurance before committing. And you want to feel confident, right, that you're making the correct move before you take it. But the challenge here is that practice growth doesn't always operate under the same conditions. So let me explain. Sometimes there is no precedent for your next marketing decision. And there certainly is no guarantee that a webinar that's well attended or maybe a new visibility strategy is going to automatically convert. Or maybe that increased exposure through an ad will immediately lead to new clients. So instead, you're often asked to really just make decisions with incomplete information. You're asked to choose a direction without knowing exactly how it's going to unfold. And then when your professional identity is built around reducing uncertainty, that can really make you feel uncomfortable and maybe a little irresponsible. And I understand that because this is what we work with our clients every single day. So you may find yourself spending extra time refining, researching, and just waiting. And you may tell yourself that you're being strategic or cautious. And in many cases, what's really happening is that risk-averse mindset is being applied to a process that really requires iteration and not so much certainty. So this is not a personal shortcoming. Let me reassure you of that. It's a predictable outcome of your training. And so the very instincts that help you manage these risks for your clients, they can prevent you from taking the necessary steps to grow your practice. And I think unless you become aware of this dynamic, it's really easy to stay in the place where you are right now and feel stuck. And it's not because you lack ambition or ability. It's really because certainty feels safer than movement. And hopefully those of you listening to this can relate to it. And so this is usually where the pattern becomes most visible, I would say. And more often, it shows up really in small, reasonable delays that feel justified in the moment. So let me explain. You may recognize it in how you approach marketing decisions. You think about increasing your visibility, but then you tell yourself, you need to be more confident before you get that first message out. Or you consider committing to a strategy, but you decide to wait until things just feel more settled, more predictable, or maybe when you have more time to deal with it. That's a big one that we hear from a lot of clients before they come see us, is that they're looking to find the right time to launch something. Because if they don't have the right time to launch it or to really dedicate what they need to it, they don't feel it's going to be successful. And I can honestly say that when I hear that, that is fear speaking. It's people that aren't sure that they want to do this, or they don't know, they're not confident that they can do this. And so they try to use time as an excuse. Okay, I hope that's making sense. So some people will see it in, as I said, webinars or speaking opportunities. They may come up and then they like the idea, but then they hesitate, right? So that could be you. Or you could wonder whether attendance is going to be strong enough, whether the timing is right, as I mentioned, or whether the effort is actually going to be worth it. And so you may also notice it in how you approach longer-term commitments, for example, right? You may postpone decisions about consistency. You will test things briefly and then pull back if the results are not immediate. That's another big one. And so you might tell yourself that you're just reassessing, when in reality, you're waiting for that reassurance. And that reassurance may never show up. And just imagine if that reassurance never shows up and you never take action, how are you going to get the results that you're looking for? So each of these choices makes sense on its own, and none of them really feel reckless or avoidant. They just feel thoughtful, measured, and responsible. So over time, they're going to add up. And I think what often gets missed is that these decisions are not really about strategy. They are about timing. They are about waiting for a level of certainty that practice growth simply does not provide upfront. And this is truly a really big issue that we hear from a lot of prospects that are waiting to find that right time before they can commit. So this is a really big concern. And I think the result is that months are going to pass by without meaningful movement. And when that happens, you're delaying success. And when you delay success, you're delaying all the things that would come with it, like increased revenue, maybe trying to save time, right? All of those things will be pushed out when you don't take action. And so, as I mentioned, the result is that months are going to pass by without any kind of meaningful movement, and your work remains strong, your reputation stays solid. But what happens is your visibility, your momentum, and your pipeline stay largely the same or actually get worse. So this is one of the most common reasons why lawyers, mediators, and divorce professionals feel stuck without being able to point to a single mistake. I hope that's making sense. And the reality is, nothing is broken and nothing is failing, but nothing is compounding either. And that is when growth quietly stalls, not because you chose the wrong strategy, but because you waited for certainty that could only be created by taking action. And so this is where the idea of certainty needs to really be looked at more closely. Because in professional services, certainty often feels like something you should be able to reach if you think long enough or you analyze carefully enough. And so you assume that with more planning, maybe with more data, or maybe more refinement, the right decision will eventually reveal itself. But in practice growth, what I see is that moment rarely arrives because there is no version of marketing, visibility, or business development where outcomes are guaranteed in advance. And this is just a very honest opinion on what I'm seeing in the marketplace. And, some marketers may deny what I've just said, and that's quite okay. But I'm just sharing a very honest opinion about what I see when professionals are looking to market their practices. Because there is no point at which uncertainty disappears entirely. That's the truth. What changes is not the level of risk, but your relationship to it. So most of the evidence that you're looking for does not exist before you actually take action. It only appears after you show up consistently, after you test those ideas and allow enough time for trust to form. And that's one of the biggest mistakes I see, is that a lot of professionals out there will try something, they'll dabble, and they'll try it for a month and, oh, this doesn't work, I'm going to scrap that idea. And so this is why so many professionals feel frustrated when they do all the right things, but they still hesitate to move forward because they're anticipating that. And so they're waiting for proof in a phase where proof cannot yet exist, right? So in reality, the only way certainty is going to be created is through repetition and consistency. So by speaking more than once, by being visible more than briefly, by committing long enough for those patterns to emerge. And so once consistency is in place, the evidence that you're looking for begins to show up. And this is not about taking reckless risks or abandoning sound judgment. This is not what I'm referring to. It's all about recognizing that many growth decisions are meant to be adjusted, not perfected. So they're designed to give you information, but not immediate validation. And so when you approach growth in this way, decisions become less emotionally charged, if you will, because you're no longer asking, is this going to work? You're going to be asking yourself, what will this show me if I commit to it long enough? And I think that shift in mindset changes everything. So when you hear the phrase taking a risk, it may immediately sound really misaligned with how you operate, right? Risk often feels like something to avoid, not something to embrace. But in the context of growing your practice, most smart decisions are not reckless risks at all. They are actually measured, they are contained, and most importantly, most of them can be reversible. So calculated risk in professional services doesn't mean acting impulsively or committing without thought. It doesn't mean overspending, and it doesn't mean overextending or chasing every new idea that comes along. Instead, it means choosing actions that give you information. And so it looks like committing to a webinar even though you cannot predict attendance with certainty, or it looks like showing up consistently online for a defined period of time, even if engagement starts slowly. Or it could look like you're selecting one strategy and just giving it enough time to work rather than constantly switching directions. And I think these decisions are not immediate payoff. They're about learning what resonates with your specific audience, what converts with your specific audience, and what builds trust over time. And what makes them safe is not the absence of risk, but really the presence of a good structure. So, you decide in advance how long you'll test something. You can define what you will measure, and you can even give yourself permission to adjust rather than abandon. And so when you approach growth this way, you're no longer betting your practice on a single outcome. You're running controlled experiments inside of a stable foundation. And this is what we do with our clients. We will experiment and teach based on what we think is going to work for them and their specific situation. And we know what works in certain specific situations from a marketing perspective, but sometimes other things will play a factor as well, based on maybe the reputation of the professional that we're representing, or maybe their past marketing efforts. Like, all of these things play a factor in whether a marketing initiative is going to work for them or not. Okay, I hope that's making sense. Another missing piece that I want to talk about is avoiding feedback, right? It's important to look at the feedback, and that can help you decide what you need to do to move forward. Because when you allow yourself to take small, structured steps forward, you're really reducing that uncertainty over time. And I think it's not because risk disappears, but because your experience increases. And this is how confidence is really built in practice growth, not through guarantees, but really through that informed movement. Okay, so I want to give you a simple way to apply this in your practice. And this is not about doing more. I want to reassure you of that. It's really about choosing one deliberate step and then allowing it to do its job. So first off, you want to identify one decision that maybe you've been postponing because it doesn't come with certainty. Okay, so take a look at your marketing, take a look at your business development. It doesn't have to be a major overhaul. Just one contained decision that keeps resurfacing in your mind and you're not taking action on it. For some professionals, maybe this is a webinar that you've been thinking about. Maybe it's a visibility strategy that you've delayed, or maybe it's consistency to doing follow-up. Whatever it is, think about that and define it. Second thing I'd like you to do is to create a short testing period. Decide in advance how long you're going to give this effort your full attention. 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, all of this depends on what you're trying to test. But quite honestly, depending on the initiative, I would really look at least 90 days before you can make a decision to say, okay, after 30 days, is this working? If it's not working, what one little tweak can I make? And then as you move into the second month, ask yourself the same question. And then once you get to the third month, which is your 90 days, you're going to have a really good idea whether this is working or not and whether you want to really commit to it. All right, the third thing you need to do is decide what information you're actually looking for. And it's not perfection, and it's not going to be immediate results. It's going to be insight, intel, information. So what's the information you should be looking for? Are people engaging? Are people reaching out to you? Are conversations being started? Are referral partners responding differently? Is your confidence increasing as you repeat action? So these are some of the things you should be looking out for. And I think the fourth thing you want to do here is you want to give yourself permission to adjust rather than judge. Because if something's not working, it's not a failure, it's feedback. Look at it as feedback. And so you're not asking, did this work or not? You're really asking, what is this showing me and how do I refine it? And finally, commit to seeing the test through. So resist the urge to stop early because something feels uncomfortable or maybe you're not getting the results yet. Growth in professional services often feels slow before it actually feels effective. And that's what we tell a lot of our clients. Results don't come immediately, but they come consistently. And so that's what you need to look for. Because when you approach growth this way, decisions are going to feel less heavy. You're no longer betting on certainty because you're investing in information. And I think information is what allows confident, aligned growth to follow. So this way of thinking is really foundational to everything else you do to grow your practice, because marketing only works when it's given the time to build trust. And trust doesn't come easily and it doesn't come quickly. And that's how marketing works as well, okay? Webinars, for example, only work when you allow yourself the time to run more than one. And this is what we teach our clients when we help them figure out their webinars and how to fill them. That's super, super important that you can't just do one webinar and decide whether it's going to work or not. It takes multiple repetitions for you to make the decision as to whether you should continue or stop altogether. And referrals, for example, they only strengthen when people see you consistently, not occasionally. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that none of these outcomes happen through one perfect decision. They happen through a series of measured choices that are made over time. I hope this is resonating. So when you wait for certainty before acting, your visibility is going to be very limited. And I think when visibility stays limited, that trust is going to take much longer to form. And so when that trust takes longer to form, growth feels slower than it needs to be. And this is why so many lawyers, mediators, and divorce professionals feel busy but stagnant, right? They're doing excellent work. They're serving clients well, but they're holding themselves back from that consistency that allows that momentum to compound. And that's what we're looking to do here, because growth doesn't require you to stop all your professional standards. It really just requires you to apply them differently. So instead of asking whether something will work, I want you to begin to ask yourself whether it is a reasonable next step. And instead of waiting for guarantees, you need to decide what you're willing to test. And instead of looking for that certainty, I want you to commit to learning. And so if you find yourself waiting for clarity, this is your invitation to really just stop and reflect. Where are you asking for certainty that can only be created through action? What decision have you delayed, not because it's unsafe, but because it's unfamiliar? And what would a measured step forward look like if you only allowed yourself to move without guarantees? I think that's a really good question. So possibility rarely announces itself with proof, but when you're willing to move thoughtfully, it becomes visible over time. Let me reassure you of that. And that is where real sustainable practice growth begins. Thanks for tuning in today. If you found this episode helpful, please share it. And if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe to the podcast so that you don't miss future episodes packed with actionable strategies to grow your practice. See you in the next episode.